I share agreement with much of what my honourable friend says. But then I return to this question: how is it going to be resolved? Because when supposing the opposition is successful and the bill goes through, and the Prime Minister is obliged to go and seek an extension and to accept an extension, and we get an extension to, say, the 31st of January or whatever date the European Union decides to offer. I'm not going to give way. What will happen after that? I mean, there is a definition of madness, which is to repeat the same thing again and again and accept a different outcome. And the longer this goes on, the more members of Parliament in this House will fear holding a general election, because out there, then the faith in the established political parties. I'm not going to give away this. The voters' faith in the establishment political parties is not being improved by what's going on. It's being further undermined. And the last thing I wanted was the whole of British politics to be realigned around the question of Brexit. But that's what's going to happen the longer we carry on putting off this decision. And I long, like so many of my voters and so many colleagues in this House, to move on to the questions beyond Brexit, but that requires us to respect the decision that has been taken. And it requires respecting the fact that there's a government in office with the responsibility to conduct the negotiations as it sees fit, or it requires those who do not have confidence in that government to put down a motion of confidence and resolve that question. And this brings me again, Mr. Speaker, back to the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, which is the resolution that we are debating this evening arises from the Fixed Term Parliaments Act. And this has turned out to be a recipe for this paralysis. This paralysis would never have arisen but for the Fixed Terms Parliaments Act. I beg your pardon, I hear the honourable gentleman from the north east of England, I forget his constituents, North Durham, saying, well, you voted for it, he says, accusingly at me. I certainly did not vote for it. And I remember, and I put on record in this House, I remember walking through the No lobby with remarkably few people against the second reading of that vote, and that bill. And I said to them, don't worry, this House will rue the day that it passed this piece of legislation. And we should now be rueing the day. Because that piece of legislation has put this House in the position where it can endlessly wound a government but can avoid killing it. And we now have... if the Leader of the Opposition has so much contempt for the way this government is conducting its affairs, and this government no longer has a majority, why don't they put down a motion of confidence? It's because there is fear in this House about facing the consequences of a general election because of the way this House has conducted the whole Brexit affair for the last 3 years.
Yep, that's right.
And when I ask how is this going to be resolved, I can tell you this. Putting it off again and again isn't going to make the political outcome of the eventual general election any easier for a great many colleagues in this House. And my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, in his inimitable style, is showing leadership and courage at last. He is trying to resolve this issue. Leave and remain were the words on the ballot paper. There wasn't any reference to a deal or no deal. And there was no reference to a deal or no deal, but the Prime Minister of the day made it quite clear that we would leave the European Union, and this House has conspired again and again to delay that happening. People in their constituencies, people particularly in Remain voting constituencies, should ask themselves what mandate do they have for putting off this decision again and again. And it's democracy in our country that is paying the price, and it's the rise of far more extremist parties that will be the result if this House carries on putting off the decision.